Alain van Versch, living in the north of France, was left homeless. He has to take care of his 5-year-old son Sam, but Alain doesn't even have money for transportation. He tried to hitchhike but no one stopped. Eventually they had to take a train. Sam said he was hungry, but the father couldn't buy him food. Later, Alain rummaged through the carriage looking for leftovers left by other passengers. That's how the father and son managed to eat. Soon they arrived in the south, in Antibes. Alain had no money at all, so he had to steal something from an electronics store. He barely managed to escape. They were met by Richard, Alain's sister's husband. The father and son had nowhere else to go. At home, Richard fed Alain and Sam. Anna had not yet returned from her job at the supermarket, where she works as a cashier. The couple lives modestly. Richard delivers frozen food. Finally, brother and sister met after 5 years. Alain explained that Sam's mother was imprisoned. He can't take care of the child on his own yet. Sam has almost no belongings, so Anna plans to seek help from the neighbors. As an additional income, Anna and Richard take in puppies for temporary care, which their acquaintance breeds. The father and son will live in the garage for now. At least now they have a roof over their heads. Sam misses his mother, not knowing that she is in prison. The very next day, Alain found a job as a bouncer at a nightclub. He started his first shift that evening. A colleague briefly explained to him how things worked here. A fight broke out between two drunk people, and Alain started to break them up, hitting his hand hard against the glass. That's how Alain met Stephanie, who sustained multiple minor injuries due to the fight. Stephanie has a car, and Alain offered to drive her home. Alain's hand began to swell and hurt. Stephanie was wearing a provocative outfit, and Alain bluntly told her that she looked like a woman of easy virtue. Stephanie clearly didn't expect such bluntness. When they arrived, Alain asked Stephanie if she had any ice. She told him to wait here, but Alain insisted on coming in too. His hand was hurting more and more. Stephanie's boyfriend, Simon, was clearly not pleased to see a stranger in their house, but Alain didn't care. On the wall, he saw many pictures of Stephanie with orcas. The girl said she worked as an orca trainer. Alain would never have guessed. Simon told Alain to leave, which angered the latter, but Stephanie immediately stopped the conflict. Before leaving, Alain wrote down his phone number for her. This situation made Stephanie realize that her boyfriend was a coward. The next morning she went to work as usual at Marineland Park, where there were shows featuring orcas, simultaneously mesmerizing and very dangerous animals. The audience applauded and cheered with delight, but everything went off plan. The orcas broke the stage and Stephanie fell into the water, surrounded by the predatory animals. Meanwhile, Alain was jogging. He still found it difficult to connect with his son, whose upbringing he had previously neglected. While Anna and her husband were at work, a neighbor looked after Sam. Stephanie woke up in a ward and could not immediately comprehend that she no longer had legs. Stephanie had a breakdown. Louise, a friend and colleague of Stephanie, tried to calm her down. Stephanie's life was divided into before and after. When friends and relatives visited her, she did not react, immersed in deep depression. Nothing would ever be the same again. When the doctors changed her bandages, Stephanie thought only that she didn't want to live like this. She wished she could end it all right now. This specialized clinic is for people with disabilities. Stephanie refused to go for walks, seeing no point in anything anymore. Alain resumed boxing. Since his coach passed away, he hadn't trained for many years. Alain also lacked female attention. He tried to make up for lost time and noticed a fitness instructor. Anna took action and got Sam into the nearest school. Alain often forgot to pick up his son from school on time, which the teachers did not appreciate. Alain no longer works as a bouncer at the nightclub. He now has a job as a security guard. One day while working he received a call from Stephanie. It was truly unexpected. Alain had already seen the news about what happened at Marineland Park, so he was aware of Stephanie's situation. Still, Alain couldn't stop thinking about this girl. At the first opportunity he visited her. Stephanie had already been discharged from the clinic and was trying to adapt to her new life. 4 months had passed since the injury. Sometimes Stephanie's loved ones visited her to help with cleaning and cooking. In other respects, Stephanie's life was absolutely joyless. She still couldn't come to terms with what had happened to her. Alain offered Stephanie a walk, but she didn't want to show herself in public. However, Alain managed to convince her. Stephanie hadn't seen the light of day for a long time, having shut herself off from the world. Suddenly Alain said he wanted to swim and invited her to join him. Stephanie thought it was madness but didn't mind waiting for Alain. Sitting by the sea and feeling the fresh wind, Stephanie realized how much she missed her old life. She decided to swim too. Alain helped her with this. It seemed that Stephanie's disability didn't bother him at all. In the water, she felt free again and laughed with happiness. While Stephanie swam, Alain managed to nap on the beach. Later Stephanie whistled, waking him up and letting him know that she was done. For the first time in these months, Stephanie's mood was high. It was unforgettable. She even tried to dance to the music. Stephanie began to take care of herself again and with Louise, sorted through her clothes. Shoes would no longer be necessary, but that didn't mean she couldn't dress beautifully. At work, Alain used his free time to watch fights. Marshall, who worked for the same company as Alain, noticed that the guy was interested in boxing and suggested he earn some money by participating in underground fights. Alain found the offer tempting. He continued to regularly take Stephanie to the beach. Upon learning about the upcoming fight, the girl became worried and said she would give him the same amount of money he would get for the competition if he would only refuse. However, Alain participated not for the money but because it was fun. Stephanie wanted Alain to take her to the competition. Alain didn't mind. Soon the doctor made a mold of Stephanie's knees to create prosthetics for her. This would allow Stephanie to walk again. Louise was here to support her friend. In any free time, Alain watches fights to learn techniques. Fatherhood is still difficult for him. When his son starts crying, Alain doesn't know how to react. Anna always stands up for her nephew. Marshall drove Alain to the competition. As agreed, Stephanie went with him. Many people gathered here placing bets on the fighters along with dealers. Underground fights are quite popular in certain circles. According to the rules, women are not allowed among the spectators, so Stephanie had to watch from the car. The fight began. Alain won. This brought a smile to Stephanie's face. It turned out that this was just the first round. Alain decided to warm up before the next fight. Stephanie was very worried about him. The fighters did not spare each other. And now it was Alain's turn again. He achieved a decisive victory. Stephanie watched the whole time through the glass. On the way back, Alain asked Marshall to stop. He spent part of his earnings on a toy car for his son. It was a surprise for Stephanie to learn that Alain had a child. Alain is still learning to be a father. He returned the money he had borrowed from his sister. When Anna found out that her brother was participating in underground fights, she of course didn't like it. Alain's relationship with the son is gradually improving. By the way, he started an affair with the fitness instructor. Whenever Alain didn't answer calls, Stephanie got upset. Otherwise, she learned to cope on her own. Marshall's job is to equip buildings with surveillance systems. Not all of Marshall's clients operate legally, but no one cares about that. Stephanie finally received her prosthetics. Alain was very happy for her. Stephanie couldn't stop smiling. She regained the ability to walk, and it seemed she needed nothing more to be happy. Later, Stephanie asked Alain if he had a girlfriend. Alain replied that it was just a temporary fling. Stephanie, who was clearly feeling jealous, shared that she lacked male attention. After the tragedy at the park, Simon left her, and since then, there had been no one in her life. Stephanie did not expect Alain to offer his help. She was so shocked that she didn't know how to react. But in the end she decided to agree. Passion arose between them. When it was over, Stephanie smiled for a long time. It was a new experience for her. Stephanie didn't think someone could consider her beautiful now that she was incomplete. Alain suggested repeating it later and left. When Stephanie recalls training Orcus, she feels sad. But she has to be strong and move on. Gathering her courage, Stephanie returned to the water park. Despite everything, Orcus didn't scare her. This could have happened to anyone. Stephanie was just unlucky. All the former colleagues were happy to see her. She missed them too. Stephanie texted Alain, suggesting they repeat what had happened between them. They met at his place, but they were interrupted by Anna, who came back from work early. Thus Alain introduced Stephanie to his sister and son. Anna sympathized with Stephanie, but despite everything the girl smiled. Alain felt uncomfortable because of his sister's overprotective behavior. Stephanie quickly became friends with Sam, who wasn't scared by her prosthetics at all. Alain continues his training, mastering new techniques. He dreams of building a career as a professional boxer. But for now, he had to be content with underground fights. Today's competition promised to be tough. At one point Alain was on the verge of defeat, but seeing Stephanie step out of the car, he managed to win. In the evening, they went to the club to celebrate the victory. Stephanie watched the people dancing. When Alain asked her to dance, she refused. Alain went to the dance floor without her, while she stayed at the table with Marshall and the others. Alain, after getting drunk, met a girl who was clearly open to continuing. It was unbearable for Stephanie to watch. Moreover, Alain was about to leave with this girl. Stephanie tried her best to pretend that everything was all right. All night long she's been drinking. A guy named Pierre approached her and offered a drink, openly flirting. Stephanie enjoyed this. But when Pierre noticed Stephanie's prosthetics, he got embarrassed and apologized, which made her angry. The next morning, Stephanie found Alain sleeping at a cafe table by the beach. When he woke up, he asked how she was doing. Stephanie didn't hide her resentment. She wants to know what they mean to each other. If they continue, they must remain faithful. This is very important to Stephanie. However, Alain doesn't plan on having a serious relationship. Stephanie said she doesn't need this if it doesn't have a future. Soon Marshall was caught illegally installing a surveillance system in a grocery store to monitor employees in the back rooms. At Marshall's request, Alain tried to hide the equipment, but the outraged store employees noticed this and started filming him. Marshall will have to leave for a few months, and he wants Stephanie to temporarily take his place and take bets on underground fights. Stephanie isn't sure she can do it but is willing to try. Marshall really trusts her. Soon Stephanie was relearning to drive with prosthetics. She also got a tattoo. Stephanie quickly adapted to the illegal business. Despite everything, she still keeps in touch with Alain. It seemed they had forgotten past grievances. Alain continues to participate in underground fights. Anna, who still works as a cashier, was caught stealing expired products and was fired. Alain is also indirectly to blame because he helped Marshall with the equipment. That same evening, Anna and Richard kicked Alain out of the house. Anna truly believes her brother is at fault because there were cameras in the back room that he helped Marshall install. Alain assured them he didn't do it on purpose. Angry, the sister slapped him. Alain is used to responding to aggression with aggression. Holding a shotgun, Richard demanded that Alain leave their house immediately. After packing his things, Alain left without even saying goodbye to Stephanie. He abandoned his son. Stephanie is worried because Alain doesn't answer her calls. She visited Anna and learned that Alain no longer lives there. No one knows where he is now. In fact, Alain left to box professionally. One day Richard found him. Alain no longer holds a grudge against him. Richard said they are fine. Anna got a job in the school cafeteria. Alain promised that as soon as he has money, he will send it to Anna. Meanwhile, while Richard is delivering the cargo, Alain has the opportunity to spend time with his son. They walked through the winter forest and went sledding. Alain really missed his son. When they were out on the lake and fooling around, Sam suddenly fell through the ice. At that moment, Alain experienced the greatest panic of his life. Calling for help and desperately shouting, he broke through the ice with his bare hands and pulled his son out of the water. Sam was already unconscious. Alain carried him to the hospital, where Sam was immediately taken to the intensive care unit. Alain watched his son through the glass, powerless to do anything. He didn't even notice how injured his own hands were. He didn't leave the son's bedside, realizing that he was the meaning of his life. Richard arrived at the hospital as soon as he could and supported Alain. Stephanie called and asked how Sam was feeling. He was more or less okay. The worst hadn't happened. There was another reason Stephanie called. She was ready to let Alain go. At that moment he asked her not to hang up and crying, said that Sam had only recently come out of a 3-hour coma. Alain was so afraid of losing him. Now he realized that he loves Stephanie and cannot bear it if she leaves him. Stephanie promised not to go. So they became a couple. Soon Sam fully recovered. Alain is now successful as a boxer. But the most important thing for him is that now his loved ones are close to him, Stephanie and Sam. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.